Hello guys, welcome back. Okay, so we will carry on with the Redux implementation and surgical refactoring of our to-do app in this lesson. We left off things in the last lesson by wiring up different components and having access to the Redux library, and we will just carry on with that in this lesson as well, right? Okay, so I'm in the app.js file at the moment. Okay, and let's go to to-dos reducer. Okay, and we saw this initial sort of data here. Okay, and then if I go back to the actions, we have this fetch to-dos action creator, which at the moment is not doing anything. Okay, so let's just fix that first. We thought that we will be receiving to-dos here, but look, this is a function which is going to run as soon as the app instantiates. Okay, it's going to go out, get the result from the API and hydrate our state. So no, it's not going to accept any arguments. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go back to to-do.js, and I'm going to copy this bit. Okay, and we will pretend. Yep, sometime you're gonna have to pretend. So I'll say const API to-dos, and that's going to be these to-dos here. Okay, we are pretending that somehow we got to-dos from the backend, and we will simply just go ahead and pass these to-dos here. Okay, cool. Now I'll go back, and that means I can go ahead and I can remove this. So that's the first thing. Okay, that means now the state is going to be an empty array. And remember, to-dos reducer, when it receives the state, it's basically to-dos, okay, not the full state. So let's go back, and we need to also create a reducer for the filter. Okay, so now if I go into the root of my project, and in here we will just create a new reducer, filters reducer, and it's going to be a JavaScript file. Yep. Okay, now we are going to export a constant, and that's going to be show all. So this is going to be basically saying that, show all to-dos. Okay, and then I'm getting a squiggly line there, unused constant. That's absolutely fine. We will also export to-dos reducer here, and it will accept a state. State is going to be a string, right? And that will say all, and then it will have action. This is going to be really straightforward, because we are just going to have a type on the action. Okay, and for now I'll just return the state. Okay, you can basically do something like this, or you can also do export default to-dos reducer. Okay, so the difference is, if you are exporting out something like this, then when you're trying to import, you will import it in destructuring way, right? Like to-dos reducer from this file. But if you are exporting out the default, then you can just say that import to-do reducer from, yeah. Okay, so that's the difference. Just thought might be useful to somebody. Okay, so now that we have this reducer, let's go back to the index file of the reducers here, and I'm going to import filters reducer, and then I'm gonna say filters reducer. So that means now in our central state, we're keeping track of two things, right? To-dos, which is going to be an array, filter, which is going to be a string. That's lovely, because now we have access to these two things. Okay, so let's go back to our app.js. First thing we will do is we are going to console log the state here and see what do we get. Okay, let's go back. Okay, so we've got an empty array. There is no to-dos because obviously we haven't called that function and we haven't provided the initial state, right? The initial state is an empty array. So that means that now we don't see anything. And that's what we are expecting, or at least what we expected, right? Okay, great. So looks like we need to dispatch that action where we hydrate the state with the data, with the API data. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, it's quite easy. This is how we do it. By convention, we will call it const mapDispatchToProps. Again, exactly the same thing, right? So we, in the earlier video, we were mapping the state to the props of this component. Now we're going to map dispatch to the props of this component so that we can call this.props.whatever function. That's what it is. Okay, so I'm going to say dispatch because it will receive dispatch. And so a couple of ways you can return, and we've been doing that just for the simplicity and for us to understand, but now we can also use JSX way of doing things, so I can just return, right, with these parentheses. Okay, dispatch will receive a key, whatever that you call it. So here we will say load to-dos, and this key is going to be available to us within the component. Okay, now the value is going to be a function. Okay, and it will have access to dispatch, and then we need to call fetch to-dos from the action like this, and it should be imported. Here we do have it imported. I will just move it one line up from the app.css. That's how I like to sort of rearrange my code and stuff. Okay, so now we have this load to-dos that we called it. You can call it anything that you want. Once you define this block or this constant map dispatch to props, you just need to pass it here. Okay, so that the connect basically knows about it, and now it will inject the state and the dispatch functions within the component. So another thing we're going to look at is the lifecycle hooks. Okay, there are quite a few lifecycle hooks, and I would strongly urge you to go and have a look at it. One of them is component did mount, and there is another one, component will mount and component will unmount. Some of them are deprecated. I haven't looked at them recently, so I would highly suggest you to go and have a look at these lifecycle hooks. We need component did mount lifecycle hook, and here we will say this dot props dot load all, or we called it load to-dos, right? Let's just confirm. Yep. So this means that as soon as this component mounts, it will make the call and hydrate the state with the function that we'd written. Okay, so that means if we go now to our browser and have a look, okay, we don't see anything yet, so let's just have a look here. So we will say console.log and state.todos.filter is not a function. Okay, so we obviously are going to have problems because now we are doing things a bit differently. Okay, but that means, did we get our to-dos? And yeah, we did, but can you see it's like nested to-dos, and I'm sure that we did something weird. So let's go back to our to-dos reducer. What are we doing? Yeah, this is what we're doing. Well, that's not good, so let's just remove this extra key. It gets confusing, so I'm going to say that makes sense. So we will return, and remember, you cannot mutate Redux state, so we will spread out the states in here. State here is an empty array, and then we will add on any to-dos here. So that means now if I come back, ignore the errors, but let's have a look. So we have to-dos, and the error also went away because we had nested object, but now we've got to-dos the way they should be. Lovely stuff. Okay, so let's go back to our app.js. Now that we are hydrating or calling that action creator for creating to-dos, it looks like we're going to be deleting this, but okay, so we will leave it for now, but let's do this. How are we getting our filter to-dos? The filtered to-dos, yeah, so we get our filter. So now that we have access, we can say props, and also we have access to to-dos. Okay, and that's basically coming from this function here, right? Remember? So we don't have to rely on the component state. And then we look at the filter. If it is active, clear, then go ahead and filter the to-dos. So I'm going to remove now this dot state because we have access to to-dos, and let's see what happens. Okay, so if you go back, lovely. So it is working as expected. If I add something, that's not going to work, and that's expected, but at least we are able to render our to-dos. Okay, so that's the first thing, and we are going to go ahead and remove the local state because we don't need that anymore. Okay, this dot state dot to-dos, so we just need to find all instances of that and replace that with this dot props. Lots of to-dos. Great. Active, no, it's not working. It's fine, as at least we are rendering, right? That's what is important. We don't see any errors there. Guys, I don't know about you, but we have a lot of flexibility here now. You know, we don't need to rely on passing these props down like it was a pain, right? So now we have a way of talking to a central place where we can, you know, if we want to change the state, we do that in a predictable way, right? We just dispatch an action, a function, which cause a change in the state. If we need anything from the state, we basically just say, look, you know, give me the state. I want to know the information. And that's exactly what it is. A predictable way of managing a state. That's what Redux is all about. Okay. So exciting stuff, man. You know? Okay. And beside this, like a single source of truth, I love that, you know, whether I'm working on the back end or the front end. I don't like when I have to keep a mental note of different sort of moving parts in application. So this is lovely because we have only one place where we need to manage the state. Let's now target this add new to do. What was happening here? Well, we had this form, add new to do, and then we were just passing a function here as a prop. So I'm just going to remove that. Okay, and let's go to add new to do. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is import connect from React Redux. Okay, we are going to create an action as well, so let's just go there. And the action is going to be, so first we will create a constant, and that's going to be create to do. Okay, and then we will create an action creator. So we will export const, and this will be create new to do. Okay, it will accept to do because we are going to need that to do to add it to the state. And then again, we can do something like this, right? So we don't have to return and then use curly braces and all that. So we can just write it a JSX way. And here we will say type is create to do. Okay. Payload is going to be the to do itself. Great. So that's now our create new to do. We are exporting that out. If I go back, and we will import that. So import create new to do. And here I can now connect this app. So what do I say? Well, connect, and then we just wrapped our component within the function call. Great. Do we need any state in here? Well, we don't need the central state. Yes, we do need this sort of a local state here. So I am not going to be calling map state to props in here. However, we do need this function. So we do need to dispatch function or signal the state about the change that, look, I'm giving you a to-do item. Go ahead and add it to the state. So we are going to define that map dispatch to props function. Another thing, see how we are using this functional component here and we're using the hooks. React Redux also give you access to the hooks, and that's something we are going to look at after we implement Redux this way, so that then we can do the comparison. Okay, that's how we started this to-do app. Did it in the most basic sort of traditional way without any Redux or anything like that. Now we're implementing Redux, and then we'll talk about the hooks. Okay, so that way it's a lot easier to understand, you know, how things are different and how you can still work with the traditional way of how things are done, and you know, you can make your own choices then. Okay, so let me go ahead and say map dispatch to props, if I can spell, map dispatch to props, and that will basically have access to dispatch, and again JSX way of doing things. And we will say create new to do. So this will become available to us within the component. It will accept a to do, then it's going to dispatch a function, and the function is going to be this function that we defined, or the action creator, remember? Okay, and I'm going to pass it the to do here. And you can call this anything that you want. Let me call it something else. I don't know, add new to do, or in fact we have this on add to do, so I'm just going to pass it here as on add to do. So now this on add to do is not referencing, because remember we deleted the function which is coming down from the parent component as a prop. But now we have access to this on add to do because we are passing it from here. Great. So we are only dispatching the action creator. So that means for the state I can say null, and that's something that you can pass for in the instances where you just, you know, use the state like map state to props and you don't dispatch anything. You can pass null, or in this case we just say null is we don't need state. And then I will say map dispatch to props. Okay, great. Now let's see what we get here. So if I say console.log this dot, in fact it's not this dot, it's the title. Okay, so if I come back, refresh, and let's see, okay, lovely. We are getting our console statement, nothing is broken, good sign. Now let's go back to app.js, because we have a function there which creates a new to-do. So let's have a look. We have this logic here, so I'm going to copy that, go back to add new to-do. So here we will utilize the early exit strategy, which means that key that you press, if it is not enter, then just return. Okay, that means that I can remove this nested sort of way of doing things, and here I can say new to do is going to be whatever, right? Title is going to be this title here, and then all we need to do really is on add to do as we were doing and pass the new to do. Lovely. And I will just reformat the code and delete this. That means if I come back, pass something, we don't see anything because we haven't got the logic in the reducer yet. So let me go back to now to-dos reducer, and we will import the create to do, and then we will have a new block which will say if the action type is create to do, then we will go ahead and say return get all the state, which in this case will be to-dos, and then just add the to-do that we receive. Okay, and let me just reformat the code. Great, come back. Hello, and hello is there. I am here. So this was lovely because see how we remove the prop drilling. We connected our component directly to the store. We sent out a signal from this component here, and it did what we were expecting for it to do without really relying on any props coming down from the app.js, right? And this is powerful, guys. This is fantastic. Okay, it makes life so much easier. I don't have to now pass anything. Look, it's just a component. Okay, so we are going to take a break here, and I will see you guys in the next video where we will carry on with our surgical refactoring.